In hardcore Nuzlocke, if a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead. The level cap is the next leader's ace, no active items can be used in battle, and we play the games on set mode. And this in and of itself can make a lot of Pokemon games that would normally be pretty easy quite challenging. But what if we were to play a version of the game that was also super hard, like just on purpose? Well, that's what we're also here to do today. This is Pokemon Sinking Sapphire, a Pokemon Alpha Sapphire ROM hack created by Drayano, who's created like a bunch of difficulty hacks across multiple generations. So it's time to see if we can save the Hoenn region from a bunch of pirates as we dive into Sinking Sapphire. If this isn't your first time here, you like the sound of my voice or the video in general, you should definitely subscribe to the channel. I put out a new Nuzlocke run basically every week, so anything you can do to help support the channel gives me more time to make more videos and get more better at making more stuff. So go ahead and do what you can, I really appreciate it. As we step outside the moving truck, seeing our new home of Littleroot Town, our journey is officially going to begin. What I always think is funny about this game, that Brandon/May's mother just like sends you upstairs while they're still getting dressed. Like all four parents are just best friends that want their kids to get together, so they're putting these teenagers in these awkward situations over and over. And I feel like you as the player are the only one that doesn't know this is happening. Like Brandon/May is already totally in on dating you and you have no idea what's going on. And that face says it all. She's totally into me. But anywho, May forgot she's supposed to meet up with her dad to catch some wild Pokemon. So she has to rush off and she'll see us later. But that being said, as we head out onto Route 101, we find Professor Birch being chased by this small dog. But didn't May just head this way to catch wild Pokemon? Why isn't she here to save you? But anywho, now it's time for us to choose our Hoenn starters. And our choices, of course, are Treecko, Torchic, and Mudkip. And even though this is a difficulty hack and Mudkip is 100% the correct answer, we're picking Treecko because it's my favorite. And now it's time for us to face off against this vicious small dog. And after we absorb the life force of this very small dog, for a couple turns in a row, we managed to grab the KO and defeat it easily, saving our dad's best friend. So this is like 100% part of our parents' plan, huh? To get the two of us working on Professor Birch's research together? Yeah, you smile and give me my starter Pokemon. But anywho, we're gonna nickname our Treecko Jet. Professor Birch then lets us know that May's over on Route 103 surveying Pokemon for him, and maybe we should head over there as well. We catch up with May over on Route 103 as she's staring longingly into this puddle. She's making a wish that her new secret boyfriend will fall in love with her, and they'll be able to run away together. And that's when she turns around and notices that we're actually there, meaning her wish has already come true. She then challenges us to a Pokemon battle because of course she does. May starts off by sending in her Torchic, and we're going to send in Jet. We're going to go for a quick attack right away, scoring a decent hit as the Torchic then goes for a scratch. And after we trade a couple of basic hits back and forth for a little while, we eventually take the Torchic down and defeat May. And after beating up our new girlfriend, her dad is so proud of us that he is going to officially offer us a research intern position. Of course, it's going to be completely unpaid because we're going to be paid in experience. And now that we've been giving our Pokédex as well as our trainer's license, it's time for us to officially start off on our Nuzlocke journey. And we should also head over to Petalburg and show our daddy our new friend so he can be proud of us. And over on Route 101, we're going to grab ourselves a Poochyena, who we're going to nickname Bingo. Over on 103, we're going to grab a Riolu. And after running around with Bandit for like forever, we are immediately going to evolve this thing into a Lucario. And hopefully this will help make the early game a lot more manageable. And over on 102, we're going to grab ourselves a Time Pole, who we're going to nickname Glenn. We meet up with our dad outside the Petalburg gym after he's already destroyed the small child's hopes and dreams. And that's when he notices us, and the fact that we have a couple of Pokeballs strapped to our belt. We let him know that we met Professor Birch and he was able to give us our first Pokemon, and that May taught us how to catch Pokemon. And I can see the grin on his face. All of this is going according to their plan. But then this dork walks in. Apparently his name is Wally, and Norman is supposed to help him capture a Pokemon so he can have a friend because, well, he doesn't have any friends. And that's when our dad gives Wally a Zigzagoon temporarily so that way he can go capture his own Pokemon. And I'm pretty sure this kid's younger than me. How come my dad didn't help me get a Pokemon? But anywho, after we help Wally capture this Ralts, he's gonna go return the Zigzagoon back to our dad. Our dad then lets us know that we should head over to Rustboro City and challenge Roxanne. And if we get enough badges, he'll see us again soon. And over on 104, we're gonna grab ourselves a Venipede, who we're gonna nickname Roller. And in the Petalburg Woods, we're gonna grab a Panpour, who we're gonna nickname Monkey. Before facing off against Roxanne, Jet is going to evolve into a Grovyle. And now it's time for us to take on Roxanne and her rock hard boys. Roxanne starts off by sending in Archie, and we send in the Monkey, who, by the way, on level 16 already has access to Scald, which is huge, so when the Archie goes for a wing attack, it's going to knock us down to about half, activating our Oranberry, healing us up quite a bit. Then when we can go for a Scald, we can quickly grab the Yoko on the Archie. Next out is going to come Nose Pass. And while I'm confident I'm faster than this thing, I don't know if I can Oko it, but going for another Scald, we're going to bring it down pretty low as it heals up with its own berry. Then it tries to go for a Zap Cannon, but lucky for me it misses, and we can fire off another Scald and grab ourselves the KO. Next up is going to come Tyrant. And I'm not sure what he's going to go for here, but we're going to swap Monkey out, this time sending in Bandit, because I know I can resist all of the Tyrant's moves as it goes for a Rock Tomb. But lucky for me, I'm not very fast to begin with. And we're still going to outspeed with a power-up punch, doing about 80% as we increase our attack, and it goes for another Rock Tomb. Roxanne is then going to use her first Super Potion healing up, but now that we're at +1, I'm hoping a power punch is enough to take it down, which it is. Next up is going to come her Ammonite. And at +2, the power punch should be more than enough, and we grab ourselves the Yoko. Next up is going to be your Anorith, and we're going to do the same thing here, going for another power-up punch, but not before it goes for an Aqua Jet, doing some decent damage to us. And even though it's not super effective at +3, it's more than enough to take it out. Which of course means that once Lilith comes in, it doesn't stand a chance either, and we defeat Roxanne. After leaving the Rustboro City Gym, we see this mysterious land pirate running towards Route 105, and behind him we see this scientist. Apparently this land pirate's made off with his parts, and we need to go get them back for him. Don't worry, sir. I specialize in land pirate elimination. Actually, it's Route 116, my bad. I never remember the names on this area. Over on Route 116, we're gonna grab a Mareep, who we're gonna name Lambshock. Oh, what are we gonna do? My wife's been stolen. Please save her! These dastardly land pirates, not only are they stealing precious parts, they're stealing wives. Wait a minute. Is this guy's wife a bird? And why are you holding a cardboard box around your waist? After we beat up this land pirate, he hands over the parts and this guy's bird wife. In Rust Rock Tunnel, we're gonna grab ourselves a Machop, who we're gonna nickname Chop. Oh, okay, apparently we're getting something else. And apparently that something else is an audience with the Devon Corporation's CEO, Mr. Stone. He hears that we're Professor Birch's new intern, and since he's something of a scientist himself, he's going to call upon our intern skills to perform the most important task of our lives. And for this task, we're gonna need a company cell phone, so he upgrades our DexNav to give us the power of cellular technology. He then wants us to deliver this letter to his son Steven, who loves rocks. And I'm wondering why he can't just call him on the phone, but I guess I'll hand deliver this letter. He does let us know that we'll need to find a way to cross the sea over to Dewford Town, and luckily there's an old man with a bird wife who owes me a favor. While making our way over to Dewford Town, Bingo is going to evolve into a Mightyena. After interrupting whatever this is, Mr. Briney agrees to sail us across to Dewford Town so that way we can deliver the handwritten letter from Mr. Stone to Stephen Stone. But of course, before we do that, there's something far more important we need to take care of, and that's collect our second badge. Before taking on Brawly, we are going to head to Granite Cave and pick up a Woobat, who we're going to nickname Snoot. After running around in circles with Snoot for like forever, we're going to have it evolve into a Swoobat. And we're also going to add Lambshock to the party and have it evolve into a Flaffy. And now it's time for us to take on Brawly and his Burly Boys. His first Burly Boy Machop comes in, and we're going to send in our Burly Monkey. And hoping to get a burn off on the first turn, we're immediately going to go for a Scald, where we do about 2/3, and fortunately we get the burn off. But the Machop's going to heal basically back up to full because of its berry juice, and then going for a low sweep is going to lower our speed a bit. On the following turn, it's going to go for a Bulk Up, which honestly doesn't really matter because Scald's a special move, so bye Machop. Next up is going to come his Meditite, and it's going to start going for a Focus Punch, and we're going to go for a Scald, scoring a pretty decent hit, getting it just below half, and getting the burn off, which is awesome. The Meditite is then going to set up a Substitute for reasons unknown, and we're going to go for another Scald, which is going to break the Substitute, and I'm pretty sure that the burn is going to finish it off. And, yep, later Meditite. Next up is going to come his Mienfoo, and we're going to swap Monkey out, this time sending in Snoot, assuming it's going to go for a Fake Out anyways, which it does. So on the following turn, we can go for an Air Cutter, scoring a massive hit and grabbing ourselves the Yoko. Next up is going to come Pancham. And we're going to go for an air cutter again, scoring a big hit, getting this thing down wicked low as it goes for a Shadow Claw, which we can tank, fortunately. Brawly is then going to heal up with a Super Potion, getting it back up to full, and we're going to go for a Heart Stamp, doing just over half. And on the following turn, we're going to do the same thing again, just so that way we know we won't possibly miss, and we take out the Pancham. This is going to lead into his next Pokemon, Scraggy. I don't really have a good solution for Scraggy, so we are going to swap out and then send in Roller, because I do know I can resist all of his moves, as he's going to go for a Feint Attack, doing some decent damage. And on the next turn, we're going to go for a Poison Tail, and I'm hoping to get the poison off, and with a crit, we do barely anything, as it goes for another Feint Attack, bringing me down to just 10 HP. So, assuming another Feint Attack, we're going to pivot, this time sending in our Bandit. So, hopefully we can resist this as much as possible, as a Feint Attack is barely anything. And then going for a Power-Up Punch, we can finish off the Scraggy and get to +1, which is pretty good. This is going to lead into his Ace Hariyama. And while I know I can't OHKO it, I'm hoping I can tank at least one Arm Thrust as we go for a Power-Up Punch, getting to +2, and it's going to go for an Arm Thrust. And luckily, it only hits us 2 times. We're then going to swap Bandit out. This time, I'm going to send in Lamb Shock, knowing he's going to go for another Arm Thrust. I'm hoping I can get the paralysis off on one of these hits. And after it hits us for all 5, it's paralyzed. So we're going to swap out again, this time sending in Jet, as it's now going to go for a Smackdown. And with Jet, we're going to go for a Mega Drain, so that way we can try to get some chip healing in, getting it down to about 50%, as it goes for another Smackdown, which is going to activate our own Oranberry. Now going for another Mega Drain, we're going to get it down just below half, which is obviously going to activate its Citrus Berry. And going for another Mega Drain, we're going to heal up just a bit as it continues going for Smackdowns. And now with just 16 HP, I got to do something. So we're going to swap Jet out, and we're going to send in Monkey, because it's my most healthy Pokemon, as it tries to go for another Smackdown, getting me down to 50%, activating my berry. And on the following turn, we're going to go for a Scald, getting this thing down way into the red, as it goes for another Smackdown, getting me down pretty low. But since I know I can outspeed it, we're going to go for another Scald, and that's when I didn't realize Brawly still had another potion. But going for another Scald, we get it down below 50%, and even then I know I should be able to take one more hit, so going for another Scald, we're going to get him deep into the red, but unfortunately my Monkey goes down. So we're going to send Bandit back in, and when going for another Power-Up Punch, we can finish off the Hariyama, but at the loss of our first Pokemon. After making our way through Granite Cave, we find this impressive specimen of a human being, staring at this even more impressive specimen of a wall. These beautiful, beautiful rocks, sullied by these drawings. It turns out Steven's here in Granite Cave trying to get some more information about Mega Evolution and exactly how it works. After presenting him with a letter from his father, he's incredibly confused as to why his dad didn't just text him. But I guess what else are interns for? And for our trouble, he gives us Steel Wing, to teach to none of our birds. While looking for Captain Stern, we make our way to the Boat Museum, where we see, like so many land pirates, admiring the ocean in all of its glory. And after finding Captain Stern, who's just like hiding in the corner over here, we're assaulted by a couple of land pirates, and it looks like it's gonna be up to us to stop them. And after beating up these 2 Aqua Grunts, the biggest and burliest land pirate of them all approaches, holding a cardboard box with a ship painted on it around his waist. His voice booming. He introduces himself as Archie, the leader of Team Aqua, the ruler and defender of the seas. So tell me, boyo, do you know that Pokemon people and all life in this world depend on the sea for life? And this is when Archie reveals his grand plan, which I feel like is probably kind of, early for the bad guy, but he lets us know that he wants to find a way to expand the sea, for all life depends on it. But what about all the things that can't swim? What about all the things that need to stay dry? However will I have gotten that letter to Steven if it got all wet? But anywho, after revealing his grand plan and giving us this awkward smile, Archie and the rest of Team Aqua decide to leave the ship museum. Over on Route 10, we're going to grab ourselves an Electrike, who we're going to nickname Zappy. While fighting our way up 110, Glenn is going to evolve into a Palpitoad. And over on 110, we're gonna run into our girlfriend. She was hoping maybe we could travel to Mauville City together, take in a movie, see where the night goes. When I ask her how long she's been there waiting for, she won't reveal exactly how long she's been waiting. But I get the idea she's been sitting in this grass for quite a while waiting for me. But before we head out on our date, she wants us to have one more Pokemon battle. Because reasons. She starts off by sending in Swellow, and we're gonna send in Lamshock. The Swellow's gonna start off by going for a Focus Energy, and we're gonna go for a Shockwave, scoring a massive hit, getting this thing down super low. On the following turn, May is going to use a Super Potion, getting basically back up to full, and another Shockwave is going to get it down wicked low again. This, of course, is when the Swell is going to waste his time going for a double team, but fortunately for me, I can't miss, and this Birdo goes down. Next out is going to come her Wailmer. And I'm not exactly sure why she sent in Wailmer next, but she's going to go for a Water Pulse, doing about 30%, and we're going to go for another Shockwave, getting it down to about 30%. And on the following turn, those Wailmer is going to outspeed us again, going for another Water Pulse, and we can go for another Shockwave, picking up the KO. Next up is going to come her Ace Combuskin. And we're going to swap Lamshock out, sending in Glenn. It's then going to go for a Fire Pledge, doing basically nothing to us. And then from here, we're going to go for a Muddy Water, scoring a massive hit, getting it down to about a quarter, and it's going to heal a bit up with its Citrus Berry. After that, the Combuskin's going to go for a Feather Dance, but lucky for me, I only throw water at people and not fists, mostly because I do not have them, and we're going to go for another Muddy Water, picking up the KO on the Combuskin. Her final Pokemon, Shroomish, is going to come in, and I'm going to swap Glenn out, this time sending in the Snoot, as the Shroomish goes for a Leech Seed on us. But on the following turn, we're going to go for an Air Cutter, doing a massive amount of damage, as she's going to go for a Toxic and scoop up just a little bit of health from us. But with one more Air Cutter, we can take down the Shroomish, defeat May, and we're going to head to Mauville City together. Before we can take on Wattson over in Mauville City, we run into Wally and his uncle. Wally's been thinking about taking on the gym challenge, but his uncle doesn't think that he's ready, so he wants us to beat up his sickly nephew, so that way he won't challenge gyms. He starts off with Fletchinder, and we send in Lamshock. The Fletchinder is going to go for a Flame Charge, scoring a decent hit on us, increasing its speed, and lucky for us, our Static is going to paralyze this thing. And when it's our turn, we're going to go for a Shockwave, bringing it wicked low into the red. At that point, Wally's going to use it. At that point, Wally's going to heal up his Fletchinder, and we're going to go for another Shockwave, this time doing enough damage to grab ourselves the KO. This, of course, is going to lead into his next Pokemon, Gible. So, assuming a Dig, we're going to swap Lamshock out and send in Snoot instead. And we call it as the Gible goes for said Dig. We're then going to then after we both miss on the following turn, we're going to go for a Psyshock, scoring a pretty big hit on the Gible, getting it down really low as it goes for a Shadow Claw, getting us to about half. And with one more Psyshock, we can then take it down. Out next is going to come Meryl. So I'm going to swap Snoot out, and this time we're going to be sending in Jet. And the Meryl is going to go ahead and set up an Aqua Ring to try to get some healing in between turns. And we're going to go for a Giga Drain, doing a massive amount of damage and grabbing ourselves the Yoko. Next out is going to come Krylia, who, for better or for worse, just traced Overgrow, and we're going to go for a Giga Drain, doing about a third as it goes for a Psychic, doing a lot of damage to us. So assuming another Psychic, we're going to swap Jet out, and instead we're going to send in Bingo as we get the Intimidate off. Krylia is going to try to go for that Psychic, and obviously it doesn't do anything, and knowing it's only neutral damage, we're still going to go for a Crunch for the stab, and it's more than enough to take the Krylia out. And with that, we've shattered Wally's hopes and dreams. Just look how disappointed he is. Now dejected and defeated, look how happy his uncle is. You monster. And this is when Wally declares, from here, henceforth, we shall be his. Never mind. Don't worry about it. My eternal... Soap. Goodbye. My eternal rival. What a weird kid. Knowing we're about to face off against an electric trainer, we are going to take our little bat out and add in Zappy, evolving it to Manectric. And now it's time for us to take on Wattson and his Zappy boys. And I gotta say, I love his shirt. Anywho, in comes Electrode first, and we're gonna send in Bandit. What I'm hoping here is that way I can set up. What I'm hoping here is that I can set up a Swords Dance and then hopefully sweep through at least 2 or 3 of his Pokemon. And unfortunately, we get paralyzed in the first turn, but we do get our Swords Dance off. Now from here, the Electrode is gonna Volt Switch out, which is incredibly frustrating. And he's gonna send in Flaffy. And we're paralyzed. On the following turn, the Flaffy's gonna go for a Fire Punch, doing a good amount of damage to us. And that's gonna activate our Oranberry so we can get a little bit of healing in. And we can go for a Bulldoze, and we can KO at least one of the Pokemon. But we're gonna have to switch now. Manectric comes in next. And assuming it's gonna go for a Flame Burst, we're gonna swap out, sending in Glenn, as it does indeed go for that Flame Burst. It's then going to set up the... It then goes ahead setting up the Electric Terrain as we go for a Muddy Water because I misclicked and we do about 50%. Then from here, it's going to go for a Snarl, lowering our special attack and doing a little bit of chip damage to us. And a Mud Shot going up against the Manectric is going to get it down into the red, lowering its speed. Is it outside of the... And healing up with its Citrus Berry is going to leave it outside of potion range, so one more Mud Shot takes it out. Next up is going to come Luxio, who's holding onto a Focus Sash, I know. And we're going to stay in, going for a Mud Shot, hoping to get it down to it, and we don't quite do it, as it then goes for a Night Slash that we can tank no problem. He's then going to swap Luxio out, and then send in Rotom instead, and unfortunately this thing is packing Levitate. So I'm going to swap Glenn out, assuming he's going to go for an Ominous Wind, and we're going to send in Bingo. And we call it as he does go for that Ominous Wind, doing... honestly, a little bit more than I thought it would. And on the next turn, we can outspeed, go for a Crunch, and then grab ourselves the Yoko on the Rotom. Next up is going to come Magneton. And I'm going to keep Bingo in, going for another Crunch, doing some good damage, and managing to pop the balloon before it fires off a Supersonic. Now we're going to risk it for the Biscuit, and we break through with another Crunch, KOing Magneton. Electrode is then going to come back in, and I'm going to swap Bingo out and then send Glenn back in because I know the Electrode has no way of actually hitting me as it tries to go for a Thunder Wave. Just for giggles, it's going to set up a Light Screen because it literally has no other options, and we're going to go for a Mud Shot, only doing about a quarter. But from here, unless he wants to waste a turn swapping out, he can't do anything, so I'm just going to keep on going for Mud Shots as he tries to continually Thunder Wave me, but obviously it doesn't do anything. And then when we go for a Muddy Water, this thing is going to get way down to the red, and now I know Wattson is going to waste his potion healing up. So after he does that, I'm going to keep on spamming Mud Shots and Muddy Waters until eventually the Electrode is going to either go down or get swapped out, which he does, sending in Luxio. But once he switches into Luxio, we're going to get him down into the red, prompting him to use his second potion, and then we can still grab the Yoko on the following turn without the Light Screen. And then with Electrode back in, it sets up a Light Screen again, but after 2 more Mud Shots, we can take it down, defeating Wattson. And this is what you get for ending my live Genlock, you son of a gun! Over on 112, we're going to grab a Stantler, who we're going to nickname Bambi. Over on Route 111, we're going to grab a Roselia. Over on the Fiery Path, we're going to grab ourselves a Coughing, who I accidentally just named B. While fighting our way over to Meteor Falls, Lamshock is going to ascend into an Ampharos. Over on Route 113, we're going to grab ourselves a Munchlax, who we're going to nickname Fella. Over on 114, we're going to grab a Skorupi, who we're going to nickname Cooper, who we're going to nickname Goober. In Meteor Falls, we're going to grab a Clefairy, who we're going to nickname Pop. After hearing that a couple of land pirates had taken a sign as his captive, May and I head over to Meteor Falls to see what's going on. And this is when we're introduced to Archie's first mate, Shelly. And I don't want to sound too bold here, but I'm pretty sure she can do whatever she wants. And after she gives us a little wink, this drives May into an unbelievable fury. And now the battle for this random scientist begins. Liepard and Golbat come out on their side, and we're going to send in Bandy and Swellow. Swellow is immediately going to go for a Brave Bird, just taking a massive hit and absolutely annihilating the Liepard. And then I'm going to have Bandit go for a Swords Dance. as the Golbat unfortunately goes for a Confuse Ray, which is incredibly frustrating for me. Shelly is then going to send in a Muck next. As the Swellow goes for another Brave Bird on the Muck, this time doing about 50%. And fortunately, Bandit breaks through with a Bulldoze, finishing off the Muck. After that, the Golbat is going to use a Confuse Ray, this time on the Swellow, as Jellicent comes in for Shelly. The Swellow is just going to continue with this absolute onslaught of Brave Birds, eventually taking down the Golbat, getting itself down to just 6 HP. And then after going for a Blaze Kick on the Jellicent takes down the Swellow. May then sends in her next Pokemon, Pikachu, as the Grunt sends in a Carvanha. Bandit then snaps out of his confusion, and sorry buddy, I'm going to go for a Bulldoze, and I take down the Carvanha and May's Pikachu. The Jellicent's going to take this opportunity to recover, which is unfortunate for me, as May sends in her next Pokemon, Combuskin, and the Team Aqua Grunt is going to send in Tangela. Knowing I don't really have a better option here, we're going to swap Bandit out, and then this time send in Jet. As the Combuskin is going to go for a Flame Burst on the Tangela, finishing it off in 1. The Jellicent then goes for a Scald on the Combuskin, knocking it out in 1 shot. And apparently that means it's just down to the 2 of us, as Jet goes for a Giga Drain on the Jellicent, bringing it down super low. And the Jellicent's going to go for a Recover, and this is just frustrating. Can you just go down, please? On the following turn, we're going to go for a Crunch, bringing this thing down wicked low, as the Jellicent fires off a Shadow Ball, doing a good amount of damage to us and dropping our special defense, but apparently it's holding a Life Orb, so it KOs itself. And with that, we defeat this pretty lady and save the scientist. But during that fight, a couple of our Pokemon are going to evolve. First, Glenn is going to ascend into a Seismitoad. Next up is going to be Jet, who is going to evolve into a Sceptile. And with the Land Pirates defeated, they accidentally reveal the next phase of our plan happening over at Mount Chimney, so I guess that's where we need to go next. And then from stage left, a bunch of Hot Topic emos and their manager appear. But before the Elder Emo can do anything, this Land Pirate steals the meteorite from the scientist and pushes him into the water, but not before May can save him. And the Land Pirates make their way to Mount Chimney. The Elder Emo then introduces himself as Maxie. He then warns us not to get in the way of their plans before leaving. But I don't even know what their plans are. But I do know I need to go to Mount Chimney because there's a couple of pirates doing some bad stuff. And once we get to Mount Chimney, we see the Land Pirates and the Emos with their dogs doing Pokemon battle. And something that's always bothered me about Team Aqua and Team Magma, they're supposed to represent the land and the sea, and all they have is a bunch of dogs. As we approach the summit, we run into this pretty lady once again. And forget we wants the redhead, we wants the blue lady. And now we have to face off against Shelly again, who's apparently leveled up a lot in the last 5 minutes. Liepard goes in first, and we send in Bingo. On the first turn, the Liepard is going to go for a Fake Out, which honestly I probably should have expected. And on the following turn, it goes for a Play Rough, doing a good amount of damage to us, and we're going to heal up just a little bit with our Oranberry. And then going for a Rock Smash, we can do a giant chunk to the Liepard. Assuming Shelly's going to heal up on the following turn, we stay in as she does, going for a Hyper Potion, and we're going to go for a Rock Smash, getting this thing back down into the red. Liepard is then going to go for an Attract because it's such a pretty little kitty. But fortunately, Bingo breaks through with the Rock Smash, taking out the Liepard. Next out's going to come our Lapras. And I'm hoping I can take one hit from the Lapras as we stay in, going for a Thunder Fang, doing a good amount of damage as the Lapras is going to fire off an Ice Beam. And Bingo goes down. So we're going to swap out, sending in Zappy. And going for a Discharge, we can get the Lapras way down into the red, but it manages to hold on, healing up with its Citrus Berry, and it fires off another Ice Beam. But after just one more Discharge, we can take out the Lapras. Next out is going to come our Ace Jellicent. And I'm going to swap Zappy out, this time sending in Lamshock. And the Jellicent's going to go for a Shadow Ball, which Lamshock can obviously tank pretty well. On the following turn, it's going to go for another Shadow Ball, bringing us down pretty low as we get the Jellicent down into the red. So we're going to swap Lamshock out, this time sending in Jet because it has the highest special defense on my team, and I really need to get some tankier Pokemon as this thing decides to go for a Scald this time, doing barely anything to us. And then I'm going to have Jet go for a Giga Drain to scoop up just a little bit of HP to heal herself up just a bit. And with that, the Jellicent goes down. Shelly's final Pokemon, Muck's going to come in. And we're going to swap out because I assume it's going to go for a Poison Jab, and we send in Bandit as it does indeed go for that Poison Jab. So we're going to have Bandit go for a Bulldoze, getting a massive hit, getting this thing down away into the red, lowering its speed as it goes for a Minimize. It's then going to go for a Shadow Sneak, doing barely anything to us, and we break through the Minimize with another Bulldoze, KOing it, defeating Shelly. As we approach Archie, we see he's messing with some kind of weather machine, putting in the mysterious rock that they stole from that scientist. And I'm still not 100% sure what they're trying to do, but I do know it's time for me to stop them. Archie starts off with Golbat, and we're going to send in Lamshock. The Golbat's going to go for a Confuse Ray right away, and I really hope I can break through this. As Lamshock does, going for a Discharge, scoring a massive hit and grabbing the KO. Next up is going to come his Dragonair, who's going to go for a Dragon Rush, excuse you, doing a decent amount of damage, and unfortunately Lamshock flinches. On the following turn, it misses this next Dragon Rush, and we can break through going for a Dragon Pulse, and honestly I do a lot less damage than I thought we would. And then it goes for another Dragon Rush as we snap out of our confusion, and we can take down the Dragonair. Electric comes in next, and I'm going to swap Lamshock out, this time sending in Glenn. And the Electric tries to go for a Protect, but it wastes its turn. Then after missing a Money Water, he's going to go for an Aqua Tail, doing just a bit of damage to us. His Quick Claw is going to activate, so that way it can go for a Protect, and if that's not a waste of a Quick Claw, I don't know what is. So after that, we're going to go for a Muddy Water. This time we connect, doing just over 50%, dropping its accuracy as it misses an Aqua Tail. Then after it protects and smacks us with its tail, we can take it out after that. Tentacruel's going to come in as Archie's next Pokemon. And it's going to set up a Rain Dance, which is going to activate our Swift Swim, so thanks for the assist on that, big guy. And we're going to go for a Mud Shot, doing a bit of damage. After that, we're going to outspeed, going for a Muddy Water, getting it down just below 50%, lowering its accuracy as it manages to hit us for the Scald, getting us down pretty low. So assuming it's going to go for another Scald, we are going to swap out, sending Jet in. And we call it, and fortunately it misses. And we're going to go for a Giga Drain on the following turn, getting it down just below half, as it's going to go for a Poison Jab, doing a bunch of damage to us. So predicting another Poison Jab, we're going to swap out Jet, and then this time we're going to send in Bandit. And after that, we're going to go for a Swords Dance, as the Tentacool goes to set up another Rain Dance so it can keep its Rain Dish going. And now at +2, we're going to go for a Bulldoze and take down the Tentacruel. Her final Pokemon, Sharpedo, comes in, and we're going to outspeed, going for a Rock Smash, getting it down to its Focus Sash as it hits us with a Waterfall, getting us down to 23 HP. Archie is then going to use a Hyper Potion, and without its Focus Sash, we can take it down on the following turn, and we defeat Archie as Bandit goes past the level cap. But fortunately for me, we're fighting a Fire Trainer next, so he's not coming. After defeating Archie and foiling this part of their plans, he makes a remark about how next time he'll have to use Mega Evolution. And I'm wondering, why didn't you use it in the first place? Why don't these people ever use their actual strong Pokemon? I wouldn't be able to do anything if you took me seriously. But anywho, after giving us this mysterious rock, the land pirates decided to just leave. Over on the Jagged Pass, we're going to grab a Spoink, who we're going to nickname Piggle. Needing to make some adjustments to our team. First, we are going to add Bella in and evolve it into a Snorlax. We're then going to add Piggle and evolve them into a Grumpig. And now it's time for us to take on Flannery and her Fire Guys. She starts off by sending in Ninetales, and we're sending in Piggle. Ninetales is going to activate the Sun with its Drought ability, and then it's going to go for a Solar Beam, which obviously is going to be an instantaneous Solar Beam. But we can tank it like a boss because we are a Grumpig, and then we fire off a Power Gem doing just over 50%. On the following turn, the Ninetales is going to go for another Solar Beam, doing a decent amount of damage on a crit, but with another Power Gem, we take it out. Her Houndoom's going to come in next, And assuming a Dark Pulse, we're going to swap out, this time sending in Fella as it goes for a Solar Beam as well, which I did not expect it to do. But it does barely anything and we heal up a bit with our leftovers. On the following turn, it's going to go for another Solar Beam, doing some more chip damage to us, and we can go for a Bulldoze, bringing it down pretty low. Flannery then heals up with her first Hyper Potion, and we're going to go for another Bulldoze, lowering its speed and getting it down into the red. And then after hitting us with another Solar Beam, we're going to go for a Bulldoze and grab the KO. Delphox is up next, and I'm assuming this thing is going to go for a Psyshock, but I should still be able to tank at least one as it goes for an Overheat, which is fine with me because of our thick fat. But honestly, it does do quite a bit more than I anticipated. But unfortunately for me, this thing's packing a White Herb. And with the Bulldoze, we do just over 50%. And the Delphox is going to go for another Overheat, and it's going to knock Fella down pretty low. And when we go for a Crunch, we can pick up the KO on the Delphox. Now that the sunlight's faded, we're going to be in a slightly better position as the leftovers heal Fella up just a bit, and a Macargo comes in next. We're going to stay in because I'm assuming that I'm faster, but I'm not even faster than a Macargo, and it's going to go ahead setting up the sun as we go for a Bulldoze, and since it's quad effective, I assumed I'd get the KO, but we don't, which is incredibly frustrating. But it does waste its White Herb on this. I'm then going to send in Glenn since this thing doesn't have Solar Beam, and she uses her second potion. From here, I'm going to have Glenn go for a Drain Punch, doing a decent amount of damage, and unfortunately its Flame Body is going to burn us, as it then goes for an Overheat, which we can tank no problem. And since it already used its White Herb, it's now at -2, which is awesome as we're going to go for a Muddy Water, and even though it's in the sun, it's 4 times effective, so we can grab the KO. Her ace Pokemon Torkoal is going to come in next. And we're going to go for a Rain Dance right away, so hopefully if this thing goes for an Overheat, we're going to knock its effectiveness down a bit as it sets up a Shell Smash, which is incredibly unfortunate for me. I kind of have to risk it for the biscuit, so we stay in and we grab ourselves the Oko on the Torkoal. And once Camera Up comes in, we're just going to go for it since our Muddy Water is going to be ×4 effective, and we can grab the Oko on it as well, and we defeat Flannery without losing anybody. And now it's time for us to take on our daddy for our 5th badge. Norman starts off by sending in an Ambipom, and we're going to send in Lamshock. Assuming this thing is going to go for a Fake Out on the first turn, we call it as it gets normal gem boosted Fake Out off on us, but it does activate our static, which is great. Now on the following turn, we're going to outspeed, and we can go for a Discharge, getting it down pretty low, and is paralyzed on the following turn. And it's not quite down low enough for Norman to heal up, so one more Discharge takes it out. Next out is going to come as Explode. And I'm going to swap Lamshock out, this time sending in Fella, because I can resist most of its moves as it goes for a Boom Burst. Which is going to do a lot more than I thought, but at least it was a crit. It's then going to go for a Flamethrower, which our Thick Fat is going to take care of no problem. And we're going to go for a Strength, doing about 60% and getting a little bit of healing in with our leftovers. It's then going to go for another Boom Burst, getting us down to about 1/3, but we can take it out with a Strength. This is then going to lead into a Staraptor, who I assume is going to go for a Close Combat here, or a Sky Attack, so we're going to swap out, sending in Lamshock as it goes for a Sky Attack, which is going to activate its Power Herb. So when it goes for the actual Sky Attack, it's going to do quite a bit of damage. So on the following turn, it's going to go for a Close Combat where I have to hope I can live, and I can't, as Lamshock unfortunately goes down, but at least we did get the paralysis off in the end. I'm then going to send Goober in, and I'm going to go for a Hone Claws, trying to raise up my attack a little bit before we start trying to take out the rest of his Pokemon. And fortunately for me, it's paralyzed on the next turn. So when we're going to go for a Night Slash, it's not quite enough at a +1, but for some reason it goes for a Sky Attack here. So we can take it out on the following turn, no problem. Next out's going to come Norman Sawsbuck. And at +1, we're going to go for a super effective Cross Poison, which we can KO the Sawsbuck no problem with. This, of course, is going to lead into Bouffalant. And going for a Night Slash on this thing, we're going to do not even 50% as it goes for a Head Charge, doing a massive amount of damage to us. And I know it's going to be a close call here, but we're going to stay in going for another Night Slash, and we just barely take this bad boy down. Once his Slay King comes in, I know that I'm in a really precarious position here, but I have to stay in hoping for a crit, and we do about a third as it goes for a Retaliate, which KOs Goober. Now, knowing I'm going to have a free turn with Truant, we're going to send in Bandit and go for a Sky Uppercut, doing a massive amount of damage, bringing this thing down way into the red. Once it heals up a bit with its Citrus Berry, it's then going to go for a Slack Off, getting basically back up to full. And I missed my Sky Uppercut. So we're going to go for another Sky Uppercut again, getting it down super low, and our Quick Claw allows us to go first, but Norman does heal up. And after Norman uses his next Super Potion, we're going to keep on going back and forth to this thing until it eventually misses a Play Rough, and we can take it down, defeating our daddy. But we did lose two great Pokemon. We're then going to add Pop into the party, giving it a Moonstone so that way it'll evolve into a Clefable. And then out surfing across the sea, we go soaring through the sky with my boyfriend Steve. And after we walk into this weird clearing with Steven and find ourselves a Latias, the biggest and burliest member of Team Aqua shows himself. They were hoping for a romantic getaway on this island, but unfortunately Steven and I got here first. This big burly boy introduces himself as Matt, and Team Aqua is here to capture Latias and Latios and unlock the power of Mega Evolution by any means necessary. And now it's time for us to take on Matt and this random lady. They start off by setting in a Nidorina as well as a Golduck, and we're going to send in Fella and Metang. The Golduck is going to go for a Scald on the first turn on Fella, doing some okay damage, as the Metang then goes for a Thunder Punch on Golduck, doing about 50%. Nidorina is then going to lay down a layer of Toxic Spikes because that's really annoying, and we're going to go for a Crunch on the Golduck and get it down pretty low. After that, the Golduck's going to try to put us to sleep, as the Metang then goes for a Meteor Mash, bringing the Golduck down, grabbing the KO. The Nidorina is then going to lay down a second layer of Toxic Spikes, which is incredibly annoying, and we're going to go for a Strength, smacking it really hard, getting it down wicked low. Barnacle then comes in on Matt's side, who's then going to go for a low kick on Fella, absolutely annihilating my Snorlax. And then the Metang finishes off the Nidorina. So since it's the only Pokemon on my squad that can't get poisoned, we're going to go ahead and send in Bandit. And we're going to go for a Sky Uppercut on the Barnacle, getting it down wicked low, but not quite getting the KO, as it goes for a Razor Shell, smacking the absolute crap out of my Lucario. And now we're paralyzed. And the Metang is going to go for a Zen Headbutt on the Survivor, getting it down super low as well. So I'm going to swap Bandit out, this time sending in Glenn. The Barnacle's Razor Shell is going to get me down to about half, and the Metang is going to get hit with a Night Slash for a decent amount of damage, but once it fires back, it KOs the Survivor, which is going to lead into Lumion. The Lumion is then going to go for an Ominous Win on the Metang, doing a decent amount of damage, as the Barnacle goes for a low kick on Glenn, doing an insane amount of damage, and apparently this Lumion has Storm's Rain, but we can KO the Barnacle, but I also KO'd the Metang. And with Glenn only having 11 HP as Blastoise comes out from Matt, and Steven sends in his Aggron. So we are going to swap Glenn out, sending in Jet, who I know is going to get poisoned, but what the heck else am I supposed to do here? As a Lumion goes for an Ominous Wind, hitting me for a small amount of damage, and the Blastoise is going to go for an Aura Sphere on the Aggron, scoring a massive hit, instantly KOing it. Steven is then going to send in an Archeops. And I know that we need to get rid of this Lumion, so I'm going to go for a Leaf Blade, KOing it in just one shot. The Archeops is then going to go for a Flying Gem boosted Acrobatics on the Blastoise, scoring a massive hit, which is going to activate its Citrus Berry. And the Blastoise is going to go for a Dragon Pulse on my Sceptile, getting it down to about half, activating my Oran Berry. But I'm going to be in kind of a rough spot with the poison, so we need to end this fast. So we do just that with another Leaf Blade on the Blastoise, picking up the KO and defeating Matt. And I can't believe I lost my Snorlax to this big burly goon. And this is where Matt reveals that he loves interesting, strong dudes, just like Archie. And this might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. And with that, we've now recruited the Latias to the team, where it will forever live in a box. And just before we leave, this is where Steven is going to give us our Mega Bracelet. Over on 118, we're going to grab Dedenne, who we're going to nickname Lad. And on 119, we're going to grab Amoonguss, who we're going to nickname Imposter. Greetings from the future. This is Uncommon Soap. And just so you know, the fight with Shelly over the Weather Institute got messed up in my footage, so I don't have it here. But Manectric and Clefable did both faint against Shelly. So you'll see when we cut to the battle with May that's coming up, the two of them are going to be in our fainted box. May they rest. Also sorry. As we approach Fortress City, we run into May, who desperately asks us where we've been, and where we got that really expensive looking bracelet. Did somebody buy it for us? Do we have a secret boyfriend or girlfriend that she doesn't know about? But when she starts asking too many questions, we decided maybe we should just have a Pokemon battle instead. May starts off by sending in her Swellow, and we're gonna send in Piggle. Now I've played Hoenn enough times to know that this sassy bird's gonna hurt itself to do more damage, and when it goes for a Protect on the first turn, my hopes and dreams are ruined. The Swellow is then gonna go for a Facade, which Piggle can barely tank, and we are gonna go for a Power Gem, getting this thing down wicked low, and fortunately the burn finishes it off. Wailord's gonna come in as our next Pokemon, and I have no idea what it's gonna go for, but we're gonna swap out, sending in Glenn as the Wailord goes for an Ice Beam. Now, just to boost up our speed a bit, I tried to use Rain Dance, and then I remembered it was already raining, you silly goose, as it goes for a Scald instead, activating our Berry. So we're gonna go for a Drain Punch to try to get some more healing in, doing a decent amount of damage to the Wailord on a crit, and healing basically back up to full as it sets up an Aqua Ring. Now we're gonna be going back and forth with this burly whale for quite a while as it goes for Scalds, and I'm gonna go for Sludge Waves. But after we get it down pretty low, Glenn's getting pretty low as well, so we need to do something about that. So I'm going to swap Glenn out and then send in Jet instead, assuming it's going to go for another Scald. Unfortunately, it doesn't burn us. And going for a Leaf Blade, we can pick up the KO on the Wailord. This is going to lead into our Ace Blaziken. So we're going to swap Jet out and then send in B instead. And it goes for a Will-O-Wisp. Why would you go for a Will-O-Wisp? Well, now it goes for a Focus Blast, and it actually manages to hit us, but luckily I'm poisoned, so it doesn't do a whole heck of a lot of damage, and we're gonna go for a Psybeam, doing about a third. The Blaziken's gonna go for another Focus Blast, and why in the world did it hit me for 2 in a row? And it crit no less. Bye, Wheezing. Alright, so I guess we're gonna send in Lad. And we're gonna outspeed, going for a Moonblast, and getting the Blaziken down pretty low, activating its Citrus Berry. And from here, the Blaziken's going to go for a Will-O-Wisp on us as well. And if I didn't know any better, this Blaziken would have Compound Eyes. But anywho, we're going to go for another Moonblast and take down the Blaziken. May is then going to send in her Raichu next. And I'm going to stay in, going for a Moonblast, seeing if we can grab a decent hit. And we do, doing about 60% as her Raichu goes for a Surf, getting us down super low. But luckily, because of our Cheek Pounce, we're going to get double the Citrus Berry. And with another Moonblast, we can safely secure the KO on Raichu. This is going to lead into our final Pokemon, Breloom. And I'm in a weird spot, so I have to just hope I can OHKO with a Moonblast, so we're going to go for that. And we managed to, KOing it in 1, defeating May. Over on 120, we're going to grab ourselves an Altaria, who we're going to nickname Nimbus. And after Steven gives us a really cool pair of goggles, even cooler than the ones May gave us, and I feel like he might be doing this on purpose. Is he trying to steal us from May? Anywho, he gives us the Mega Stone for our starter. And now it's time for us to take on Winona and her Sky High Sky Guys. She starts off by sending in Skarmory, and we're going to send in Bandit. On the first turn, we're going to outspeed, going for a Blaze Kick, and I was hoping I'd be able to OHKO it, but we don't, as it then heals up with its Citrus Berry, and it's going to set up a Stealth Rock. Which honestly is better than going for a Brave Bird, so we can take it out on the following turn with another Blaze Kick. Next up is going to come our Talonflame. And we're going to swap Bandit out, assuming that it's going to go for a Flare Blitz. Sending in Glenn, as we call it, and it does indeed go for the Flare Blitz, doing barely anything to us. On the following turn, it's going to go for a Will-O-Wisp, and we're going to set up the Rain Dance. That way, when I inevitably have to switch into Dedenne, we're going to have ourselves Perfect Thunders. And even with the time 2 speed boost, it's still faster than me, but we can go for a Surf and grab the KO, but now we are super low with Glenn. Honchkrow comes in next. And assuming a Brave Bird, we're going to swap Glenn out, sending in Lad, as it does indeed go for a Brave Bird, getting a crit and getting us down super low. But because of Cheek Pounce, we're going to basically heal back up to full. And when going for a Thunder, we grab a massive hit and the Oko, which of course is going to lead into Gyarados, and it has a Wiccan Berry, but I have to hope that Thunder is enough, and it is as we grab the Oko on it as well. Once Sigilif comes in, the rain stops, and I'm still going to risk it going for a Thunder, and we pick up the KO, which is going to lead into our Ace Altaria, who is going to Mega Evolve into Mega Altaria, but we still outspeed, going for a Moonblast, getting it down super low as it goes for a Dragon Dance. I'm going to assume it's going to go for a Roost here, but instead Winona uses a Hyper Potion, so we're going to go for another Moonblast, getting it down pretty low as she then heals it up again. Then firing off another Moonblast, we're going to get it down wicked low again, and we still outspeed even with a Dragon Dance, so our little lad sweeps most of Winona's team, and this could have gone so much worse. Over on 121, we're going to grab ourselves a Herdier, who we're going to nickname Meatball. In the Safari Zone, we're going to grab a Go-Go, who we're going to nickname Rammy. We're going to add Meatball to the party and then evolve it into a Stoutland. On 122, we're going to grab a Jellicent, who we're going to nickname Stash. In Mount Pyre, we're going to grab ourselves a Litwick, who we're going to nickname Leota. At the top of Mount Pyre, we're going to find Archie as well as our big burly boy Matt, and before them are two orbs. Archie then grabs the blue orb because of course it's his favorite color, because it's the color of the sea. And now that he's acquired the blue orb, Team Aqua can finally move on to the next phase of their plan, and he's going to leave Matt to take care of us. And now it's time for us to take on big burly boy Matt and his big burly Pokemon. Golduck comes in first, and we're going to send in Jet. And now that we can Mega Evolve, most of Matt's team is effectively going to do nothing against us. So we're going to go for a Leaf Blade on the Golduck, Okoing it immediately. Once his Blastoise comes in next, we go for another Leaf Blade, and we don't quite get the KO as this thing fires off an Ice Beam, getting us down super low. But with one more Leaf Blade, we can take it down. Barnacle comes in next, easy enough to take down, which is going to lead into Ferrothorn. And once Ferrothorn comes in, we're going to swap out into Bandit, and going for a Blaze Kick, we can obviously grab ourselves the KO. And with that, we defeat Matt, and we need to catch up with that submarine.
I hope you're listening out there, Captain Stern. We of Team Aqua will now be assuming control of your lovely submarine. You'll contribute to our great plan of returning everything to the beginning. I hope you'll appreciate this great honor.
Sorry, I just really wanted to do my Archie voice. Once we get to Lily Cove City and start heading towards Team Aqua's secret base, we run into May, who lets us know that she just went shopping. And she got a lot of really cool stuff. I let her know that we need to stop an evil organization from increasing the rate of global warming, but she's far too excited about all the cool new Pokemon that she's caught, and asks us for a battle. And I really don't think this is the right time or place for this, May. But she's gonna send in Swallow. And we send in Lad. It's gonna go for a Protect on the first turn, that way it can activate its Toxic Orb. But on the following turn, we can go for a Discharge and Oko the Swallow, no problem. Next out is gonna come our Wailord. And I'm assuming my little rat can do the exact same thing here, as it goes for Protect once again, but once we can get the Discharge off, we easily KO that Wailord. Next up is going to come our Raichu, and I'm going to go for a Moonblast here, doing about 60% as it does some chip damage to me. And with one more Moonblast, Dedenne takes it down. Out next is Sylveon. And using Full Switch, we're going to do a little bit of chip damage, while swapping into Piggle, and it goes to set up a Reflect. We're then going to go for a Psyshock on the Sylveon, bringing it down super low, as it goes for a Hyper Voice, doing a decent amount of damage for us before May heals up. And going for another Psyshock, we do about 50%, and another one will take it down. Out next comes Breloom, who we can outspeed with a Psychic, taking it down in one. This of course leads into her ace Blaziken, who despite not knowing what Mega Evolution was last time we saw her, evolves into Mega Blaziken, going for a Blaze Kick, but luckily our Thick Fat keeps us up as we go for a Psychic, taking it down in one, defeating May. After fighting our way through Team Aqua's secret base, we run into Matt, who just finished it up, giving Captain Stern's submarine a brand new paint job. And at last, the land pirates will finally become proper sea pirates. After fighting our way through Team Aqua's secret base, we ran into Matt, who just finished putting the finishing touches up on Archie's brand new submarine, courtesy of Captain Stern. And now the mighty Team Aqua can finally become proper sea pirates as opposed to the land pirates they've always been. And if we want to stop them from causing global warming a lot more faster than it's going to be happening anyways, it looks like it's going to be time for us to battle him. He starts off with Golduck, and we're sending in Lad. Going for a Thunder on the first turn, we miss, and then he misses a Hypnosis. But once we connect on the following turn, we take out the Golduck. Next up comes Torpedo. And I know this thing has a Focus Sash, so we're going to go for a Discharge again on the first turn, getting it down to its Focus Sash. And it fires back with an Earthquake, which I did not realize it had, getting me down super low. But this is going to activate our Citrus Berry, and then our Cheek Pouch is going to get us effectively back up to full. I'm honestly not sure if I'm faster or not, but Matt's going to go ahead and use a Volt Restore here, but since he already used his Focus Sash, another Discharge will easily take out the Sharpedo. Next out is going to come his Nidoqueen. And we're going to swap Lad out, because whether this thing goes for a Sludge Wave or an Earth Power, I am in huge trouble, and it decides to go for a Sludge Wave, which is going to do just a bit of damage to us. Changing things up is going to go for an Earth Power this time, doing a lot more damage to us as we don't quite get the KO with a Surf. Knowing another Earth Power would take me out, I'm going to swap Glenn out, and then this time we're going to be sending in Piggle. And Matt decides to go for a full Restore. So it's going to outspeed us going for a Blizzard on the following turn, and we can get it down super low with another Psychic before Sludge Wave takes us to half and we take it out. Next up is going to come Barnacle. And assuming an X-Scissor, we are going to swap out, sending in Meatball. That way we can get the Intimidate off on this thing, because honestly, Barnacle's kind of a problem for most of my team, and when it goes for that X-Scissor, it's going to do barely anything. I'm then going to go for a Yawn on the following turn, and I assume this thing's going to go for a Cross Chop, but there's not really a whole heck of a lot I can do as we tank it pretty well considering, and we can heal back up with our Citrus Berry. We're then going to stay in, going for a Play Rough, doing about a third, as it's going to go for another Cross Chop, bringing me down to just 19 HP before the Barnacle goes to sleep. And this does mean that we can safely swap Meatball out, and then this time send in Jet. We're then going to quickly Mega Evolve Jet, and then go for a Leaf Blade, picking up the KO on the Barnacle. Matt's then going to send in his Ferrothorn. And assuming that it's going to go for a Poison Jab here, we are going to swap out, sending in Bandit, who can obviously dodge it. And after missing a Blaze Kick, we're going to get paralyzed, and then after getting hit with a Power Whip, we can grab the Yoko, no problem. His final Pokemon, Blastoise, comes in. And we're going to swap Bandit out, this time sending in Piggle, because I assume it's going to go for an Aura Sphere, and I didn't even realize now that Matt could Mega Evolve, and his Mega Blastoise is going to go for a Hydro Pump, which Piggle can barely tank. And honestly, left with no good options, I have to stay in, as the Blastoise goes for a Dark Pulse and takes Piggle down. So we're going to swap in Jet. And I don't know if it's going to be enough, but I decide to go for a Leaf Blade, where thankfully we score a crit, grabbing the KO, because a Blizzard would have been very bad. And with that, we defeat Matt. But it turns out that while we're fighting Matt, both Archie and Shelly managed to sneak onto the submarine, and they're already on their way to Kyogre. So I guess there's nothing left for us to do except go get our 7th badge. And now it's time for, honestly, my least favorite challenge in all of Hoenn, as these 2 rocks come out against my 2 fish. On the first turn, I'm going to have Glenn go for a Surf, scoring a pretty massive hit on their side of the field as they go ahead and set up screens on their side. And then after that, we're going to go for a Rain Dance to keep Glenn going fast. Tate and Liza are then going to heal Solrock up, and we are going to go for another Surf, bringing the Lunatown down and bringing the Solrock down super low so a Dark Pulse can take it down. Next up, we're going to come Bronzong and Gallade. And what we're going to do is swap Glenn out, sending in Jet, as the Gallade goes for a Leaf Blade on Jet, doing honestly more than I thought it probably should, and we're going to go for a Will-O-Wisp to burn it. Then on the following turn, we are going to Mega Evolve Jet, and go for a Leaf Blade on the Gallade, bringing it down pretty low as it goes for a Leaf Blade on Stash, doing a decent amount of damage. Then from here, Stash is going to go for a Dark Pulse on Bronzong, doing about 50%, and fortunately we get the flinch off. Tate and Liza are then going to use another Full Restore, which honestly I probably should have predicted, and where Jet is going to go for another Leaf Blade, doing about 50%, as we get the Bronzong down low enough to activate a Citrus Berry, and unfortunately misses its Hypnosis, and this is when the screens wear off. And without the screens, one more Leaf Blade can easily take out the Gallade, and Stash can go for a Hex, doing a bit of damage to Bronzong as it sets up another Reflect, and so King comes in next. I'm going to have Jet go for another Leaf Blade on the Slowking, scoring a pretty massive hit, and Stash is then going to go for a Dark Pulse, taking down the Bronzong. And then from here, the Slowking is going to go for a Stab Psychic on Jet, doing some good damage and unfortunately dropping our special defense, and that's when their Ace Gardevoir is going to come in next. and it's going to trace Water Absorb, which is fantastic. We're then going to swap Jet out, and I'm going to send Glenn in. And then, of course, Gardevoir is then going to go ahead and Mega Evolve, and it's going to go for a Psychic on Glenn, doing a lot of damage as a Dark Pulse doesn't even bring down the Slowking, and Glenn is now down super low. Now in kind of a really bad spot, we're going to swap Glenn out, this time sending in Meatball instead, as we can get the Intimidate off on their side of the field for, reasons, and the Gardevoir is going to go for a Hyper Voice, getting me down pretty low on Stash, but then we can heal up with our Citrus Berry. And then Stash is going to go for a Dark Pulse and finish off Slowking. Gardevoir is then going to go for another Hyper Voice, hitting our side of the field pretty hard, and Meatball stays up on 3 HP before it heals up and going for a Yawn. And then from here, I'm just going to have Stash go for a Hex, even though we don't have a status effect on it, and it does about a third as the Reflect wears off. Now, expecting another Hyper Voice, we are going to swap both of our fellas out, sending in Bandit and Lad instead, as the Gardevoir does go for a Hyper Voice, doing a massive amount of damage to my side of the field. But now that it's asleep, we can go for a couple of massive hits, taking down the Gardevoir and defeating Tate and Liza, honestly, a lot more easily than I expected. After defeating Tate and Liza, we hear an earthquake over in the distance as a beam of light shoots up from the sea. And just in time, champion Steven Stone is here. After taking us back to his place, Steven apologizes for how small his house is, but it's big enough for everything he needs. But on to more important things. There is a super ancient Pokemon that has been sealed up deep beneath Route 128, and Team Aqua with their new Sharpedo Submarine and Blue Orb have managed to awaken it. And if we don't find a way to stop them, irreparable damage will be done to the entire world. And all of Hoenn will be underwater. And it looks like it's going to be up to us to stop him, and not the Pokemon League champion. So he gives us dive and tells us to go take care of it. Over on 127, we're going to grab ourselves a Tentacool, who we're nicknaming Jelly. And in the seafloor cavern, we're going to grab ourselves a Tyrant, who we're going to nickname Chomper. As we make our way through the seafloor cavern, we see Maxie fall before Archie. Team Magma has been defeated, and Team Aqua's vision of how global warming will take place has become victorious. All we can do now is stand back as Kyogre drowns the world. As we make our way through the seafloor cavern, we find Maxie and Archie. Maxie on his knees. Team Magma has lost, and Team Aqua's version of global warming has become victorious. Because with the blue orb and the power of Kyogre, Archie will finally realize his dream of drowning the world. A world where everyone can be sea pirates. There will be no more land pirates, because there won't be any more land. And now that means it's going to be time for us to take on Archie and his ultimate team of pirate Pokemon. Crobat comes in first, and we send in Lad. We're going to go for a discharge right away, bringing this thing down pretty low, and fortunately it's paralyzed. So that means when Archie goes for a full restore, we can go for another discharge, taking it down wicked low, and one more takes it out. Next down is going to come is Dragonite. Nothing I have can really resist Earthquake here, but I know Lad can't take it, so we're going to swap out, setting in Stash, as it does indeed go for that Earthquake, doing barely anything. On the following turn, it's gonna go for an Outrage, doing some great damage to Stash, getting him down to just 5 HP, and we're gonna go for a Will-O-Wisp. That way, we can break its multi-scale. Now that it's locked into Outrage, we're gonna swap out, sending Lad back in, as the Dragon Age can do nothing about it, and the burn does a bit more damage. And it's now from here, we're gonna go for another Moonblast on this thing, doing a good amount of damage, as the Dragonite then goes for an Earthquake, but fortunately with the burn, it only does about half. And between my two Citrus Berries, we're going to be able to heal back up to full. So of course that means with one more Moonblast, we can safely take the Dragonite down. Next up is going to come Tentacruel. And I'm going to risk it for the biscuit, going for a Thunder, and we are lucky enough to connect with this thing, bringing it down wicked low and getting the paralysis off. And it's going to go ahead and set up a Rain Dance for reasons. So because of its Rain Dish, it's going to heal up just a bit, but now we have 100% accurate Thunder, so we're just going to go ahead and do that, taking out the Tentacruel. Next out's going to come is Walrein, and once again, a 100% accurate Thunder should be enough to take it out, but it protects on the first turn, so when we go for another one, we grab the KO. Electos comes in next, and we are going to go for a Moonblast on this thing, doing about 40%, as an Aqua Tail gets us to about half. And honestly, with the rain stopping, I'm not risking it, so we're going to swap into Jet as it goes for another Aqua Tail, which we resist. We are then going to Mega Evolve Jet, and we're going to go for a Leaf Blade, and we can finish this thing off no worries. Which, of course, is going to lead into Sharpedo. And once the Sharpedo Mega evolves into Mega Sharpedo, we are going to outspeed with Elite Storm, KOing it immediately, and all that talk about Archie's ability to Mega Evolve amounts to absolutely nothing. But even though we've already defeated Archie, it changes nothing. He refuses to give up his plan, even though that's the way Pokemon battles are supposed to go. And just as he's about to wake Kyogre up, Shelly comes rushing in. And while she loves Archie's dream of creating a world where only pirates can exist, what would happen to all of their Mighty Enas, all of their dog Pokemon? Pokemon that make up like 93% of Team Aqua's total Pokemon. But Archie says it's too late. He's already made up his mind, and he activates the blue orb as Shelly and Maxie leave. And I'm pretty sure that when your girlfriend tells you not to wake up a primal force of nature, you're supposed to listen, because once Kyogre wakes up and returns to the surface, all Heffel begins to break loose. After returning outside, Archie realizes that this isn't the magical land of pirates that he was hoping for, and if the entire world is covered in one giant ocean, that means that there's only salt water. Which means he's accidentally created Waterworld. And he doesn't want to have to do what Kevin Costner does at the beginning of that movie. Maxie lets us know that we need to head over to Setopolis and stop Kyogre before it's too late, because even though he would love to do what Kevin Costner does at the beginning of that movie, he loves the land too damn much. After getting to Setopolis, we're going to run into Steven, as well as this magnificent man, who is apparently Wallace, the 8th and final gym leader. After seeing that we have the red orb, Wallace takes us towards the Cave of Origin, where we run into Maxie, Archie, and Shelly. Archie, having finally realized his defeat and the fact that he probably doesn't want to drink his own pee, has Shelly hand us the Aqua Suit. And between the Aqua Suit as well as the red orb, we should be able to resist Kyogre's powers and send it back to its eternal slumber. So are we ready to save the world? And just before we leave, enter May, who's incredibly jealous that we're hanging out with Steven and not with her. And even though there's like a bunch of adults here, she says that she's also going to help. And the best way that she can help is by keeping lookout, because she doesn't have 7 badges, the red orb, or a super duper scuba suit to give me. And now it's going to be time for us to take on the primal power of Origin, Kyogre. And after slapping this thing a few times with our lizard, we defeat the primordial being of the sea and save Hoenn. You're welcome, everyone. And now it's time for us to take on Wallace and his water guys. And honestly, my plan here is to try to wait out the rain as much as humanly possible, so once Politoed comes in first, we are going to go for a substitute specifically to try to wait out the rain. And on the following turns, we're going to go for a discharge, getting it down pretty low as it misses a hydro pump. And from here, we can safely go for another discharge, taking the Politoed out. Next out comes Ludicolo, and it's going to go for a Hydro Pump, breaking our substitute as we go for another discharge, getting it down to about half. And once we go for a Protect, it's going to go for another Hydro Pump. Now hoping it's going to miss this following Hydro Pump, we get lucky, and it does. So when we go for another discharge, we're going to get it down wicked low. And this is when Wallace is going to use up another full restore to heal the Ludicolo back up to full. So going for yet another discharge does about 30%. And on the following turn, we're going to Protect to ensure that it can't attack us with this next Hydro Pump, and now the rain is done. Which means we are faster and we can go for another substitute, as Ludicolo sets up another Rain Dance, which I didn't realize it had. But I guess that's fine, because it's going to go for another Hydro Pump, hitting me, because of course it does, and we can go for another Discharge, which does quite a bit of damage. And from here, we're going to go for another Protect, as the Ludicolo tries to go for an Ice Beam. So now that it's out of Hydro Pumps, we can swap Lad out and then send in Bandit, since none of its moves are going to do a whole lot of damage to a Steel-type Pokemon, and it's going to fire off an Ice Beam doing barely anything. And from here, it's going to go for a Giga Drain doing a decent amount of damage, and we can go for a Swords Dance to get to +2 as the rain stops again, and now we outspeed, going for an Earthquake, grabbing the KO. Next up is going to come Kingdra, who we can outspeed, and we go for a +2 close combat on, bringing it down in just one shot. Next down is going to come is Starmie. So assuming it's going to go for a Psychic, we are going to swap Bandit out, and instead we're going to send in Stash as it tries to go for a Hydro Pump, which our Water Absorb can take care of. And from here it's going to go for a Thunder where it misses, and then we can go for a Dark Pulse doing just over 50%. And when it tries to go for another Thunder, it's unfortunately going to connect this time, but we have an absolutely massive special defense stat, and we can break through the paralysis, KOing the Starmie. His Melodic is going to come in next. And I don't really know what it's going to go for, but it goes for a Protect on the first turn, which means when we try to go for a Will-O-Wisp, it can't do anything. And I know that it's not going to do a whole lot of damage, but I need to make sure I can get some extra chip damage on this thing, so after it goes for an Ice Beam, doing a little bit of chip damage to us, we're still paralyzed, and I just want to get a Will-O-Wisp off on this thing. But after we go back and forth for another round, we do manage to get off the Will-O-Wisp. And now we can start going for Stab Hexes, since this thing can't really do any damage to us. And now it's just going to start spamming a recovery move, so I should probably swap out again. So I'm going to swap out, sending Bandit back in as it goes for another Protect, healing itself back up again. And on the next turn, we're going to go for a single Swords Dance as it manages to miss its Hydro Pump. And we will go for our final close combat, bringing this thing down. And even though it's dead, we are madly in love with it due to his cute charm. And his final Pokemon, Swampert, emerges. Knowing I don't really have a good option here, we are definitely going to swap out Bandit and then send in Meatball to get the Intimidate off, because I know that this thing is going to Mega Evolve. And once it does, it's going to go for an Earthquake on our Doggo, doing a good amount of damage. Then from here, we're going to go for a Strength, doing just under half, as another Earthquake is going to bring us just below half. And once we get it down way into the red, I know that we need to swap, otherwise we're going to lose Meatball. So I do, sending in Glenn as Wallace uses the next full restore. And now our two frogs are just going to start exchanging Earthquakes and Surfs, but ultimately we're going to be able to come on top, defeating Wallace and earning our 8th and final badge. And now that we've made it through Victory Road, let's take one final look at our team before we face off against the Elite Four. First up, we have Bandit the Lucario with Close Combat, Poison Jab, Earthquake, and Swords Dance. Glenn the Seismitoad with Surf, Earth Power, Sludge Wave, and Rain Dance. Leota the Chandelure with Calm Mind, Shadow Ball, Flamethrower, and Dirt Pulse. Scale Shot the Gyarados with Waterfall, Crunch, Ice Fang, and Dragon Dance. Who is rocking with Moxie? I did not realize that. Jet the Sceptile with Leaf Blade, Crunch, Dragon Pulse, and Leaf Storm. And finally, Lad the Dedenne with Substitute, Volt Switch, Moonblast, and Discharge. After I did my team recap, I took a break and came back, and I couldn't get the game to load, so I had to back up my save, uninstall everything, and then reinstall everything. So I don't think I quite have my settings right, but we'll see what happens. But anywho, it's going to be time for us to take on Sydney and his Dark Pokemon. He's going to start off by sending in Weavile, and we're going to be sending in Scale Shot. Now, I know Lucario would probably be a better choice from most of his team, but I also know that this scrafty Angry Ninja can probably OHKO me, so I'm hoping a Moxie with Scale Shot is more than enough, as this thing launches an Icicle Crash on its first turn, and we're going to go for a Dragon Dance to get the +1 on our attack and speed. And after we get to a +2 on both of those things, another Icicle Crash is going to come in, getting us down into the red, but this is going to activate our Citrus Berry. And then now from here, I'm going to go for a Waterfall on the Weavile, grabbing the KO. Next out is going to come Scrafty, who's going to get an Intimidate off, but we're still at +2 as we go for another Waterfall, getting back up to +3. Out next is Bisharp, and when they're going to go for another Waterfall, we're going to knock it down to its Sash as it goes for a Thunder Wave. This is when Sydney's going to heal up, and we can go for another Waterfall, grabbing the KO. And when Sydney's Tyranitar comes in, fortunately it misses, but unfortunately we're paralyzed. It fortunately misses again though, and we can grab ourselves the OHKO on the Tyranitar, which of course is going to lead into his final Pokemon, Greninja. Once the Greninja comes in, I need to swap out, so I do, sending in Glenn, since I know my special defense is going to get boosted by the Sandstorm. And after it manages to get the poison off on us, I accidentally go for a Gunk Shot, but he goes for a Hydro Pump, getting me down just below half, and we do a good amount of damage to him. But now I'm a little afraid, and I'm hoping he's going to go for another Hydro Pump, so I swap out, sending in Jet, but he calls my bluff as he goes for an Ice Beam, freezing me. So we're going to swap out, sending in Bandit, and he goes for another Ice Beam, doing barely anything, but I'm frozen again. So after a couple more turns, we're going to swap out into Land, where we can take out the Greninja. And when his final Pokemon, Absol, comes in, I know that he's going to Mega Evolve his Absol, and we are going to outspeed going for a Moonblast where we can finally take down his last Pokemon, and we defeat Sydney. And now it's time for us to take on Phoebe for our second Elite Four challenge. Phoebe starts off by sending in Miss Magius, and we're going to go ahead and send in Glenn. Since Miss Magius is Fairy type in this game, we're going to go for a Sludge Wave right at the beginning, but it's going to outspeed us with a Moonblast, doing a decent amount of damage, but fortunately that was a crit and it didn't even do half, and our Sludge Wave does basically nothing. Because I completely forgot that Ghost resists poison, so it's going to go for another Moonblast, doing about the same, and we're going to go for a Surf, getting this thing down into the red as we get a little bit of healing in from our leftovers. Phoebe is then going to use her first full restore, and we're going to go for another Surf, getting it down just below half. And I know I can stay in for at least one more, as another Moonblast gets me down to just 9 HP, but we still don't take it out. So, assuming another Moonblast, we are going to swap out, and we're going to send in Leota instead, as it does indeed go for a Moonblast. And while the Miss Magius is going to outspeed us on the following turn, hitting us with a Shadow Ball and getting us down pretty low, we're going to get some healing back up with our Citrus Berry, and then take it out with a Shadow Ball. Dusknoir's going to come in as our next Pokemon. I'm going to stay in, going for a Shadow Ball, and fortunately it is enough to take it down, which is going to lead into Gourgeist. And once again, we are going to stay in, going for a Flamethrower as we manage to take this thing out, and I cannot believe we got 2 Okos in a row with Leota as Gengar comes in next. But I do know my luck would run out with a Gengar, so we're going to swap Leota out, and then we are going to send in Scale Shot instead, as this thing goes for a Shadow Ball, which is going to do a good amount of damage to us. But I know I can tank at least one more hit, so we're going to go for a Dragon Dance, and now we can outspeed the Gengar. And on the following turn, we can go for a Crunch and grab ourselves a massive hit and the KO. Next up is going to be your Chandelure, where we can quickly grab the Yoko on it as well, but unfortunately now we're burnt, but we are at +3, so we're in a decent spot once Sableye comes in, who is obviously going to Mega Evolve right away into Mega Sableye. And we can go for a Crunch, doing a good amount of damage, as a knockoff is going to knock off our Citrus Berry, and we are in trouble. And we're going to swap Scale Shot out, and then send in Lad as it tries to go for a Metal Burst, excuse you. So we are going to set up a substitute, because I am not dealing with that. And once we can go for a Moonblast, we can safely take down the Sableye and defeat Phoebe. And now it's time to take on Glacia and her slippery icy girls. Aurorus comes in first, and we send in Glenn. And unfortunately, this stupid thing is Snow Warding. But this is exactly why I kept Rain Dance on Glenn, so we're going to set up the Rain as the Aurorus tries to go for a Blizzard, but misses. So on the following turn, we are going to go for a Surf, and we can grab ourselves a Yoko on the Aurorus. Next up is going to come Jinx. And we're going to stay in, but unfortunately, this thing is Dry Skin, and then it puts us to sleep. So we are going to swap Glenn out, and instead we are going to send in Scale Shot as the Jinx goes for a Blizzard and manages to connect, but luckily it only does about a third. The Jinx outspeeds us on the following turn, going for another Blizzard, knocking us down below half, and I probably should have used a Dragon Dance. And when going for a Crunch on the Jinx, we're going to get it down to its Focus Sash, lowering its defense. This is when Glacia is going to go for a full restore, so this is going to give us a free opportunity to go for a Dragon Dance, so now we're faster than this thing. And when we go for a Crunch this time with the defense drop and the no Focus Sash, we take it out no problem. Next up is going to come Frostlass. And I know that this thing has Thunderbolt, but I also know I can outspeed it, and we can quickly grab the KO. And from here, the rest of Glacia's team should go down no problem, so first is going to be Mamoswine. And once we go for Walrein, we're going to get it down pretty low once it sets up the Hail. But with a second Waterfall, we can take it down without any issues. And this leads into her final Pokemon, Glalie. And I'm pretty confident that I can take down a Mega Glalie in one shot, so I'm going to stay in, going for another Waterfall, KOing it, defeating Glacia. And now it's time for us to take on Drake and his marvelous mustache. Hydreigon comes in first, and we're going to send in Scale Shot. And I'm hoping I can set up a couple of Dragon Dances and then just sweep through the entirety of Drake's team, but we'll see. After a first Draco Meteor brings me down below half, we can set up a Dragon Dance as a Citrus Berry heals us back up. And now after going for a second one, a second Draco Meteor is going to do basically nothing to us. But we're still in a really crummy spot. As I go for an Ice Fang, we can quickly grab the Oko. Now at +3, once Dragalge comes in, we can go for another Ice Fang and getting ourselves to +4. Once Kingdra comes in, I honestly don't know if I can tank another Draco Meteor, but we're going to stay in, getting it thing down super low as a Draco Meteor gets us down to just 6 HP. And Drake goes for a full restore, and we score a higher hit and get the KO. Next up is Flygon, and going for another Ice Fang, we can quickly bring this monster down, which leads into his Haxorus. And when we go for another Ice Fang, we bring down the Haxorus, no worries, which is going to lead into his final Pokemon, Salamence. And even though it got the Intimidate off on us, I'm pretty sure I'm at a +5 at this point. And a quad effective Ice Fang takes down the Salamence, and we are moving on to Steven. I cannot believe that I managed to get a hidden ability, Gyarados, as my final encounter of the game. As we enter the Champion's Chamber, we find the magnificent Steven Stone standing before us in his absolutely marvelous gray and purple suit, his ascot just right, his Megastone pinned to his shirt like a lapel. He knew we'd make it here one day. Ever since we took that magical ride on Latias together, he knew that we shared a special connection. But now, the time has finally come to find out who the true Pokemon Master is. The marvelous Steven starts off by sending in Skarmory, and we're gonna send in Glenn. And I'm pretty sure he's going to set up a Sandstorm basically on the first turn, so I'm going to go for a Surf right away to try to get as much damage as I can in, doing just about half, as it goes for a Stealth Rock, which I probably should have assumed. But anywho, we're going to go for another Surf before we can set up the Sandstorm and take out the Skarmory. Next down is going to come his Aerodactyl. And once this thing goes for a Brave Bird, it's going to do a massive amount of damage to Glenn, getting him down just below half, and we are going to go for a Surf, quickly grabbing ourselves the KO, which is going to lead into his Aggron. Now I know I'm just kind of stuck in here with Glenn for as long as he can hold out, so we're going to go for an Earth Power on the Aggron, knocking him down to his Focus Sash. He then fires back with a Head Smash, getting us down into the red, before he decides to use his first full restore in the following turn, but going for another quad effective Earth Power without his Focus Sash is enough to take him out. His Claydol's gonna come in next, and I know that Glenn's put in about as much work as he can, but we're gonna go for another Surf, bringing this thing down way into the red, as all it does is set up a Reflect. This is gonna prompt Steven to use his next full restore, which is also going to waste one of his turns, and we're gonna go for another Surf, getting it down low again. And on the following turn, we outspeed, going for another Surf, taking out the Claydol. And Glenn has been an absolute unit this entire run as Deanty comes in as his next Pokemon. And when we go for another Surf on this thing, we're going to get it down just below half as the Deanty fires off a Moonblast, which is going to take us down to just 52 HP, and we are still in the yellow because of our leftovers. And when going for one more Surf, we can take down the Deanty, which is going to lead into Steven's final Pokemon. His Mega Metagross comes in next. And once this beast Mega evolves into Mega Metagross, it's going to outspeed us, going for a Zen Headbutt, which finally takes down Glenn. May you rest, my friend. So we're going to go ahead and send in Leota, who is immediately going to get taken out with an Earthquake because I didn't realize Metagross had Earthquake. So once we send in Scale Shot, it goes for a Zen Headbutt on us, and I'm hoping I can stay up to set up a Dragon Dance, and we luck out as a Citrus Berry heals us back up to a decent spot, and then we can go for a Dragon Dance, getting to +1 attack and speed. And now with the Reflect gone, we can go for a Crunch on the Metagross, bringing it down super low and getting the defense drop before it goes for a Stab Zen Headbutt, taking down Scale Shot. Now sending in Bandit. The Metagross is gonna go for a Hammer Arm that I hope I can stay up from, and I don't, as Bandit gets taken down. But this does also mean that Metagross's speed has been lower because of the Hammer Arm. So once we send in Jet and Mega Evolve our starter Pokemon into Mega Sceptile, who even in Oris is kind of useless compared to the other starters, is going to go for a Crunch, scoring the final hit we need on Steven's Metagross to secure victory and become the Pokemon League champions. And that, everybody, is how I beat Pokemon Sinking Sapphire, my first ever Drayano hack. And this takes a game that is honestly pretty easy and completely turns it on its side. This was an absolutely amazing game, and I really enjoyed playing it. If you enjoyed the video, the sound of my voice, and made it this far and you're not subscribed yet, then come on, what's the matter with you? Just hit the button. You know you want to. And let me know in the comments down below what other ROM hacks and fan games you'd like me to tackle in the future. At the time of my voice saying this, we're just around 20,000 subscribers, and I'm hoping we surpassed it by the time this video comes out, but whether we have or we haven't, if you enjoy my stuff, do what you can to support the channel. But anywho, I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya!